Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Big Bros podcast. My name is Ilan, and I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host, Jeremy. How are you going, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. A little bit under the weather this week, as you guys might hear in the voice. It's a bit croaky. It's a little bit nasally, but we're on the tail end of it now. So well and truly back to feeling somewhat better.
That's right, mate. I'm glad to hear you've been taking some Armour Force.
Well, started off with Armour Force, but in these later phases, it's just been spamming the nose spray so that I can actually somewhat breathe, and just eating and drinking a lot of hot soup and hot teas. So nothing that a little bit of mum's cooking can't fix.
Well, that's right. Well, listen, it's July. July is also maybe June, May. It's cuffing season.
Is it?
I reckon so.
Cuffing season.
I heard
okay.
So maybe summer is, hot girl summer, hot boy summer. But
right, okay.
Come winter, it's cuffing season, right?
Okay, all right.
It's not just flu season. But some people might be navigating some breakups. And some may have been broken up with. Last year, they had hot girl or hot boy summer. And they might be asking themselves the question, how soon is it too soon to actually move on, to start meeting new people, to put myself in a new situationship that might evolve into something deeper? And that's the question. That's the topic of today's episode.
Yeah, well, it's a very relevant one, as a lot of the topics are that we discuss. And yeah, we haven't done a dating one for some time now, and this one is one that always does seem to come up, and it's something that we've all experienced, which is why we wanted to talk about it, and hopefully you guys listening can take a note out of this one, because if you're listening and you've gone through a breakup and you've always asked yourself, well, when is the right time for me to move on? Hopefully this provides you with some answers. It's certainly the type of episode that I would have liked to have heard when I was navigating this myself. I'm sure you were the same, and I think we can dive into this one with a bit of personal experience as well.
Oh, 100%. I think the reason I really like this topic is because it's so relatable for so many people navigating the breakup scene, right? Imagine how guilty you must feel. It's been a few weeks. You get a DM from someone you find quite attractive, right? And you want to chat to them. And in the back of your mind, there's nothing wrong with it. But then a part of you is like asking yourself, well, I was just in a relationship 3 weeks ago. What if my ex finds out that I'm chatting to this person?
The devil and the angel on the shoulder situation.
Yeah, exactly. But then you ask yourself, well, should I be feeling guilty in the first place? So how soon is too soon is the question, right? And I think it depends. The answer is always going to be, it depends. First thing is, who called the breakup, right? Who called it off? Was it yourself or was it your ex? Number two, how long were you dating for? What kind of relationship was it? Were you dating for 5, 6, 7 years, or was it a 2-3 month situationship? Asking yourself that question is really, really, really important.
Were you checked out already?
Yes.
Were you checked out already before ending it? Was the breakup quite mutual? So like you said, a lot of questions that depends on this answer. I want to come back to that first one though. You mentioned it kind of matters as to who did the breaking up with. Why do you think that matters?
Because usually the person that initiates the breakup emotionally checked out 2-3 months earlier.
2-3 months?
Maybe not 2-3 months, but substantially earlier. Because most people who break up, I don't think it's usually an impulsive decision. It's a bunch of micro tears, a bunch of paper cuts that have accumulated over time, right? The missed, opportunities to connect with that partner, feeling ignored, feeling as though they don't care about you, and that accumulates. Maybe it's all the things that accumulated some sort of resentment. You don't break up with someone usually over one incident unless it's like betrayal, cheating, and so forth. You usually break up with them when there's been a few months and you realize, far out, like I'd be better off if I was single relative to being with them. So if you've already broken up with that person, you've already acknowledged to yourself that they're not the right one for you in most cases. So in that case, you may have already grieved the end of that relationship whilst being in it. Now, the question is, the person that's being broken up with, this is new for them. This could come to them as a complete shock. So the way they approach their grieving is going to be different to your grieving. I don't know if you saw this TikTok, and I found it really funny, and it's interesting, which is like, if you're going through a breakup, she will win game one. So in America, 7-game series.
Basketball, that is.
Basketball, hockey, 7-game series, best of 7. You break up with them, or they break up with you rather, and you think they're on top of the world. They're going out that night. They're posting on their socials. They're looking like they've had a glow up, and you're grieving, right? Because they probably already grieved that breakup long before they ended it with you.
I'm assuming this is of the lens of her breaking up with him.
Yes.
Okay. Because it could work both ways.
Oh yeah, 100%. It was just the video I saw. Anyways, and the video is like, she's going to win game 1, and that's okay. You're not going to win game 1. It's going to be a slaughterhouse.
It's a 7-game process.
Yes. But you're going to win game 2, or you're going to win game 3. So the point is, your journey of how you approach that breakup is going to be far more different than the person who decided to emotionally break up with you a few months earlier.
Yeah, and look, I don't want that message to be misconstrued to think that it's a competition between you versus them as to who does better in the grieving process. And I know that's not your point, but I think what that message is showing that, yeah, you might not feel up to the grieving process in those earlier days, hence game 1, but you might feel more accustomed to it later on down the line, hence game 2 and game 3.
That's right. And I think treating a breakup as though it's a competition is one of the worst things that you can do. You know, this isn't a competitive process. You should focus on trying to actually heal yourself rather than thinking, well, how can I make it so that the other person that has just broken up with me, how can I make it out to them that they've lost me? And look, it might feel quite motivating, because what happens when we're going and navigating grief? We're feeling really depressed. We're feeling really, really flat, and we feel like we're devoid of energy. It's all the characteristic symptoms of clinical depression. So what gets us up and going is, it's a bit of competition. How can I get a little bit of revenge? And whilst it might be useful in that it might get you to the gym, it might get you to do a bunch of things, you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. You're doing it to show that person that they've lost you. And it can be effective in the short term, but it's this tonic that it's actually going to erode at your being over months and months. If your only motivation in life to almost get better and self-improve is to show the person you're with that you've won the breakup, what does that show? Yeah,
well, it shows that you're not actually focusing on yourself, isn't it? You're actually trying to just still compete with them and still trying to get the upper hand. And we all know that you're flogging a dead horse by doing that. And you're only going to reach a point where that person that is actually focusing on themselves and is not trying to compete with you, they're probably doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and they're not worrying about posting those Instagram stories. They're not worrying about jumping on the dating apps too soon, because they are doing the work. And when you eventually find out that they have probably moved on because they're feeling a lot better and they've finally met someone and they're ready to be out there, but meanwhile, you're still feeling extremely sorry about yourself because you've just been competing against them and competing against others the whole time, well, that's where it's sometimes too late of a wake-up call. And in a way, it's almost like you've missed out on time spent that could have been spent being productive in terms of breaking up. So I think that's a topic that is nice to talk about, and we actually haven't spoken too much about previously, is like how to be productive in your breakup process, because it's very easy to say, feel crap, go through the motions and just focus on what's ahead of you and take things day by day, and whatever those self-help strategies are, do them. But there are ways to be productive that are different for each person when it comes to breaking up. But we know that the most unproductive way is to just compete against that other person. Try put up those Instagram stories. Try to prove to the world that maybe they are bad, or posting a story to your close friends that you are on some level of higher upness compared to them, and they're still doing these things and they're still caught up in those ways. That's just proving to the world that they are still in your brain rent free, and you are still of this competitive mindset, and you're actually being completely unproductive with your time. And all that's going to do is, it's not only going to keep reinforcing how much you resent that person, which is very sad, but it's going to cause a resentfulness towards yourself as well. You're going to end up hating yourself because you're just going to keep feeling this sense of hatred, this negative energy, and ultimately that's not a recipe for moving on and getting better.
No, and usually, and this is one of the big arguments of why I believe you shouldn't necessarily jump into a relationship with someone as soon as you've been broken up with. key word is you've been broken up with. You're not the one who initiated the breakup. It's because usually when you're broken up with, there's usually an opportunity for self-reflection. There's a lot of answers to questions that you might have that is usually identified in a breakup period, right? If you've broken up with me and there was a reason why you broke up with me, what was it about me? What was it about my personality? What was it about our relational dynamic that caused you to check out? And those might be such painful questions to confront, but they might very well be crucial if you're going into the next relationship. Let's say you're with someone, right? And they said to you, well, I felt like you were really codependent with me and I felt like I couldn't go out with my friends because every time I did, you would blow up my phone and you told me that you wanted me home or you were trying to talk to me and then you get upset at me every time I ask for space. What does that show to you? What is that reflecting to you? But if you were to jump into your next relationship straight away, let's say you get back on the apps and you don't want to address the fact that your partner or your ex-partner who's just broken up with you has told you one of the reasons was you were quite codependent. How's that going to play out in your next relationship? So I think taking the time to actually ask, what was it about this relationship breakdown? What was it about me that person no longer wanted to put up with is a very, very crucial thing.
Hard to do though.
Hard to do, but I'd encourage you, right? And maybe it has nothing to do with you. And that's something I really want to emphasize. Don't take what I'm saying here as, well, the reason they broke up with you, it's because of your fault. Maybe there's something to do with that person. Maybe it has nothing to do with you. But that's also a learning in and of itself. It's learning that sometimes in life, the people that you're with are going to want to detach from you, and it has nothing to do with who you are. It has everything to do with them.
Yeah, I think no matter who broke up with who though, there should be a time period of being with yourself and not jumping into the apps and not jumping into getting out on the town. I think there should be a time period of just reflecting and being on your own and feeling the breakup. Now, I know the next question will be, well, how long does that time period last for? How long is it that I should feel that sense of grief and be on my own and not jump into those things that I've mentioned, going out, being around new people and trying to form new connections and jump into the apps and things like that? And my answer is always going to be, you move on when you no longer want to feel sorry and crap about yourself anymore. I think that is the key moment when you know, okay, I have been feeling sorry for myself for too long now. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I actually want to increase my energy. I want to be around positive people. And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to go out with a lens of looking for someone and trying to spark up conversation with someone to hopefully eventuate into something romantic with them. But that just means trying to get a little bit of positivity back in your life again in a way that you've maybe not been doing so for some time period whilst you have been grieving, whilst you have been mourning and reflecting. It's just like a death in a way. It's just like, if someone unfortunately passes away in your life, you're not going to go out partying, socializing, being as vibrant as what you normally would be, because you're feeling sad, you're feeling upset, and you're mourning that, and you're grieving that, and you just want to have a period of being on your own and reflecting and maybe just thinking about those things. And that might be with your friends around you, and that's always very helpful. But you're not going to be wanting to get out on the town. And it's the exact same thing with a breakup. Having that period of just mourning and reflecting on your own until you actually get sick of that and you don't want to do that anymore. And that might be the wake up call as to, you know what, like I've been doing this for some time now and it's been helpful in some ways, but I also just don't want to do this anymore. And when you know that you don't want to do it anymore, you will really feel that. Because if you still want to be a little bit reclusive at home and not go out, you'll feel that as well. So it's just a feeling. It's not a matter of time. It's not like, okay, after 4 weeks or 4 months, that's when I know that I need to get out there and put myself out there again. It's a feeling. We all know that it's a feeling because we've been there before. We've got friends that have been there before, and you can feel and see the change in character when that person or yourself wants to get back out there again and doesn't want to just be hibernating as they have been.
It's like nursing an injury, isn't it? You have to listen to your body and listen to what it tells you. But something that I was just thinking about before is the time it takes to grieve a 20-year-old from a breakup is going to be different to maybe the 30-year-old. And what I mean by that is for that 20-year-old, it could have been their first relationship and they don't know what they want. So potentially it's more beneficial for them to be single, to figure out how to live life first and foremost. So maybe for them jumping into a relationship 1 or 2 months later isn't the most beneficial thing, although it can work out. And truthfully, I'm probably in a lucky case because that happened with me and I'll touch on that in a second. But let's say you're a 30-year-old woman, right? And you have just been broken up with who you thought was going to be the love of your life. You had planned a wedding and you want to have a family and you've got this internal biological pressure because for you, you know that you want to settle down and you want to have kids. Her grieving process is going to look very different to the 20-year-old version of her. What I mean by that is for her, she might not have 2, 3, 4 years of copious grieving that she might want to undertake. Not that she was going to in the first place. But in that case, I would almost recommend that you get back on the horse as quickly as possible because you already know what you want. You want the family, you want the kids, you want the white picket fence. Stereotypical, but for a lot of people, that is the case. So in that scenario, I wouldn't recommend that you spend copious amounts of weeks and months crying and reflecting on that breakup. You reflect on it, but you almost rush. I don't want to say the word rush, but be a bit more speedy with it. Be a bit more urgent and intentional. If you know that you want to find Mr. Perfect and find kids, go on those dates. Even if it might be 2-3 weeks after that breakup, you know what you want. So I think the grieving process is going to look really, really different depending on who you are, what stage of life you're in. And believe it or not, usually the adage that getting under someone is the best way to get over the previous one. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I don't disagree with it at the same time. So what I mean by that is a lot of times people think they were so in love with their ex and they think that if they were to get with someone new, they think like, well, if I get with someone new, it's going to remove the love I had for my ex. Well, in that case, I don't believe it was actually love. I think if anything, it was attachment. It could have been codependency. It could have been infatuation, but it wasn't love, right? Because I'm not a believer that just because if you start something new with someone and you were in a long-term relationship with, let's say, your ex, I don't think if you truly, truly love them, I don't believe that you can just get over them. Right? If you were to sleep with someone new, and even if you found that person really, really attractive.
It's almost like a litmus test in a way, isn't it?
It is a litmus test.
Not to say that you should go and do it, but it's to go and say that if you did go and do it, you shouldn't feel so sorry about yourself if you felt a certain way about it.
I agree. And I think that a lot of people, I think we know what love is, especially because of how it makes us feel or what our perceived idea of love is. But my belief, and look, it's an opinion more than anything, is that love isn't something that's cultivated in a few months. It's cultivated over a matter of years, and it's more of an action verb than it is a feeling verb. And I think that's what, reinforces a sense of love. So I think when people say, well, I was so in love with my ex, and then you tell me that you've had 3 or 4 situationships in the last 12 months, I don't think you truly love them, because I think if you did, there'd be such an achy part of you that doesn't want to go out. Now, I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. I'm just saying there'd be such a level of difficulty associated with going back on dates and so forth.
Almost like the feeling or the thought of being with someone else might almost repulse them.
Yes, 100%. And I think that it's very important to actually identify where you're at. Like, when I mean identifying where you're at, it's like, that's why I really don't think that you should wait too long. And I was going to share my story quickly. It's like I had a relationship when I was 21 that I had emotionally checked out from like 2 or 3 months earlier. And it wasn't a long relationship. It was probably 8 months. So really not that long in the grand scheme of things. And then after I broke up with her, I was like, you know what? I'm happy to just be single. I'm happy to move on, but I'm happy to not necessarily seek another relationship. And happened to be that my current partner reached out to me and she was the one who made the first move in that sense. And the funny thing about that is that if I was to be like, nah, I had just broken up with, butterfly effect takes takes hold. I don't know where I am.
I just broken up with someone. There's no way I'm getting with someone else. Then you wouldn't be where you are now.
Fairness, it was a month later, and I felt like I was already healed. It didn't. It felt more like a situationship that had gone on too long, as terrible as it sounds. But if I truly loved the person I was with previously, I don't think I would have been able to pursue the relationship I'm in now. And the only reason is because if I really, really loved that person I was previously with, I would have still been broken probably a month later. I probably still would have been healing, but I felt fine. I felt like I was functioning. I felt like I was able to do all the things I wanted to do. And I was actually quite happy just being on my own. And I think that's a really good litmus test. If you want to ask yourself, how do I know when I'm ready to actually move on? Ask yourself how comfortable you are to spend time on your own. Because if you're at that point where you're loving life, you're loving taking yourself out and doing things on your own without feeling as though you need to be with someone else, that's usually an excellent sign that you're ready to join forces with someone else, or at least put yourself in a position where you might meet someone. Yeah,
well, that's certainly how I felt as well.
Yeah? Tell me about that.
Well, yeah, similar situation, going through a breakup where it felt like, I was maybe checked out, before doing it, as most people would be, because like we said, you're not going to impulsively just break up with someone. You're going to think about things first and assess it. But yeah, then when the time came when I eventually met the person I'm with now, it felt like I was at a stage in my life, and they were at a stage in their life too, where they were actually, and I was actually content with being on my own, and that's the key point when people say you have to love yourself before you love someone else. That's exactly what it means. You need to be happy with your own company first before you can then give that love to someone else. And I think a really key summary of this episode so far is that it is all based on a feeling. It is all based on a feeling of readiness, that feeling of knowing when you want to move on, that feeling of knowing, yes, I'm happy with myself and how far I've come, and the feeling I have when I am with myself. So I am now ready to move on and maybe invite someone else in my life. It is all a feeling, just like comparing that long breakup process where maybe you've been with someone for a long period of time, but you're still young, versus maybe also being with someone for a long period of time, but you're actually in a bit of a rush to meet someone else. It is all a feeling. That 20-year-old girl versus that 30-year-old girl, there is no right or wrong answer as to when they should move on, because it is all based on that feeling, right? It's all based on that readiness, that knowing what they want and when they want it, and the time frames matter as well. So when you sometimes hear about those stories of that 30-year-old person that maybe was in a 7-year relationship, but then 3 months later they found their husband, well, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because they were ready. They felt ready. They knew what they wanted, and they went out and they found it. So there's no right or wrong answer. It is all based on that feeling of knowing, okay, I know I'm ready to move on, because one, I'm either done with feeling sorry for myself, I hate feeling this negative way, and I want that positivity back in my life, or two, I feel comfortable in my own skin. I feel happy with being in my own company, and I am ready to invite someone else into my life. And three, and finally, I know what I actually want. I've done the reflecting, I've done all the work, and I actually know what I'm looking for. I know my values, and I know what values I want to have in my life. So regardless of whether that's 3 weeks, 3 months, or 3 years later, it is all based on that feeling.
It's true. It's based on that feeling. This conversation's actually taken me back like 4 years. Because you block a lot of stuff out, I think, naturally, just as life goes by. And I remember when I started seeing my current partner, I had almost not feelings of guilt that I was seeing her, but I had more this like residual anxiety, thinking like, what are people going to think?
What are people going to think? Do they think it's too soon?
Yes. And I remember thinking about that and almost being so tied up with it. And it really pissed me off for some reason. Not that other people might care, but the fact that I cared about potentially other opinions. And I remember having to just bite the bullet and asking myself, if no one else cared, would I still make this decision?
Great question to ask yourself.
It's like the whole question is like, if money and status wasn't a thing, what would you spend your life doing? Yeah. And then the answer was right there. It's like, I'd still be doing what I'm doing now. So for me, it wasn't a question of whether I should or shouldn't be doing. It's like, how much am I going to let what other people say dictate my life decision. I think for anyone who might be in that position, I'm not recommending that the first night after your breakup, you go out to the clubs and you completely expose yourself and say, hey, I'm single. What I am suggesting though is if you've got this anxiety that you think, well, people are going to judge me for moving on a month or two after, it's like, you know what? Life is really, really, really short. I don't think there's anything wrong with going on a first date, even if you have residual feelings for your ex. If you find that you're still clicking with this person, you're starting to like them, but you still have attachment towards your ex-partner, then I would stop, because I think then it's a little bit unfair towards the person you're seeing. But sometimes I do think that meeting someone new can kickstart the process or almost help you consolidate that grieving process. Because when you meet someone new, what it does is it gets you to the point of acceptance. It gets you to the point of like, okay, I actually did break up with that person, or they broke up with me. Therefore, I can move on with my life. And that's usually the closure that you need. The closure might be, it's like, no one else is going to ever want to date me because that person broke up with me. That's why it's so painful. But as soon as you start going out on the town, or you start speaking to people, and it might not even be dates, but people are clearly drawn to you. They want to have conversations with you.
That could be the closure that you need.
That's the closure and I think that's really the case. So that's why I think you shouldn't, grieve, spend a few days, spend a couple of weeks doing what you got to do. But me personally, I would never think ill of you as a human being if you wanted to move on right away after that. I wouldn't think ill of you, but I would also caution you, just be like, also, am I also moving on because I feel like I can't be alone?
That's it. It's all based on that feeling again. I would only judge them if they are moving on without actually feeling like they can move on. If they can move on and their feeling has surpassed them, they don't have those feelings towards that person anymore, that's completely fair. It doesn't matter about the matter of time. It's about the feeling as to, okay, I have felt very content within myself now, and I'm ready to make those moves and invite someone else into my life.
But man, these are murky waters. So for anyone who is navigating this, know that there isn't necessarily a wrong or right. There's just some helpful things you can do and things that are less helpful. So on that note, guys, if there's anyone that is navigating this period post-breakup, especially in cuffing season, send them this episode. Hopefully it helps. On that note, guys, have the best Tuesday and have the bestest rest of your week. Ciao.